I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive Corporation. Joined alongside me virtually and technically is Ben Ellering, Senior Systems Engineer from Sophos. Today, we're going to show you how to have 6 arms and 6 tools technically in one handy-dandy unified threat management appliance, right? Gateway device. It is Sophos UTM. It is pretty cool and is just at the front edge of what is happening in gateway and endpoint technology that we will discuss more as we're going through today. But some cool stuff on the very near horizon with Sophos and tying the threat universe together. So first of all, let's if you've been to these in the past, you know what we do. We talk less through the PowerPoint slides and more about relevant technology. To that end, we will meet Productive in 1 minute, and we'll talk a little bit about what we see the mid-market looking like through a couple slides, and then get right into the Sophos UTM. We are going to do this in 30 minutes or less, so giddy up because we have a lot to cover. So, who is Productive Corporation, you ask? Well, I'm glad you took the time to ask that question because we are a security and storage software expert for mid-sized companies. We have a dedicated team that is specialized, that can help you with questions and implementation assistance so you don't have to navigate the scary World Wide Web on your own. We also implement, test, and optimize the products that we sell. We do everything from security assessments, penetration tests, to implementation and optimization of UTM. We also do an AV or security health check. We produce tons of third-party content for the mid-market. That is all available at productivecorp.com/content, as well as our YouTube channel. The bottom line is we have the resources to help you, whether it's implementation, assessment, licensing, or optimization services. We are here to help. And one of the ways we do that is by putting on the content presentations about products that we think are fantastic from a technology perspective and a good fit for the mid-market. So if you joined us at the top, you know we have Ben Ellering from Sophos here with us today, who's going to help us demonstrate the Sophos UTM. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about what we believe life is like in the mid-market, right? Take a look at this, right? The typical network admin. What do they have going on? Oh, just a couple things all day long, right? From, at the bottom level of just securing the environment, making sure that endpoint is deployed, make sure it's working, make sure mobile devices aren't doing things that they're not, up to figuring out what's happening at the gateway. Is the VPN working? What about IPS? Are we using that? Any of the networking stuff, all the way up through reporting, event analysis, forensics, if they even have time for it. A lot of guys do not. Tons of stuff on the plate that we believe you need to pick and choose the handful of things that you do every day. At the same time, the Banditos here, the bot herder, is getting more sophisticated in what they do, right? Using APTs, varied entry points, physical or virtual type of social engineering attacks. They are getting in. They're not just trying to bust down every door. They're doing it in a very discreet way. They're trying to find an access point or points to report back, to kind of sneak around and find out quietly what you have, right? When they do that, they will start spreading throughout the environment, also in a very, very quiet way, so that the longer they remain undetected, the longer they have to leak data out of your environment. And so as you see, right, and you know this, I'm sure maybe your boss or your boss's boss is not aware, that not only are you tasked with 100 things a day which you can only do 10, now the guys coming at you are even more sophisticated. But wait, there's help, right? Here comes, right, the Lone Ranger, and his name is Ben Ellering, and he's going to talk about how to reduce some of this complexity with the Sophos UTM. Ben?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Yeah, so when you take a look at all the different threats that are out there and all the different ways that you need to protect your environment, there's a couple things that we believe at Sophos that we want to help administrators. One is reduce complexity wherever we can. So what we're really doing is we're engineering the administrative complexity out of the devices as much as possible. They're very robust, they're very in-depth, and they have a lot of industry-leading technology behind the scenes. But what we would think where the complexity tends to come in is all the different terms that are out there and all the different ways that vendors go about trying to, I think, make their product look more important by being confusing and being hard to set up and configure. So when we go through and take a look at reducing complexity, it really is all about the administration complexity that we try and reduce. The other things that I think are also important is not only reducing the complexity from an administrative side, but also the devices and the systems that are out there. They need to understand and they need to work together. When you look at endpoint protection, when you look at firewall, your network protection, your web filtering, all those different components, when you look at point solutions, have inherent holes when you move from one manufacturer to the other. So what we believe is also important when we reduce complexity is making sure that the different security products that we have understand the security posture of a user and a communication from that user to the internet, to internal servers, to those sorts of things that people do on a day-to-day basis for business. So what we want to do again is reduce the administrative complexity and overhead, give you time back in your day, give you easy to use console and views into what's happening on your network. So it doesn't take you, an hour to produce a report and say, okay, well, these are all the applications that are being used and these are all the web sites that users are going to. Being able to apply that policy to a user and being able to report on that is an important aspect of saving time. So those are areas that we think are important in reducing the complexity. Definitely not reducing the threat signatures, definitely not reducing the things that we're looking for, just more on the administrative side of things. So that's kind of what we go about doing when we look at our products.
Yeah, which is a great overview. Ben, are you ready to show this thing?
Yeah, sure. We absolutely can.
All right. Well, let's do that. I've turned control over to you, so as soon as you share your screen out, I am, there we go.
All right. So you see the Sophos website?
Yes, I do.
All right. So yeah, what we're going to be focusing on is this area, this product right here. You'll notice it says UTM and Next Gen Firewall. Really, those are marketing terms. When you look at a multifunction device, there are a lot of different marketing terms that different companies try to use. Next Gen Firewall, Application Aware Firewall, multifunction firewall. Those are all, again, just marketing terms. If you want to break it down to what we want to do is we want to control all 7 layers of the OSI, and that's what we're going to be able to do here. So this is the interface. All of our boxes look the same up and down the, the product offering. So when you're looking at the dashboard, this is what you're going to be able to see. I'm going to definitely just cover the high points and show some of the things that I think are definitely time savers. So when we take a look at the dashboard, this is just telling us from a high level where users are spending their time on applications, the amount of bandwidth coming in and out of the network. And you can see I have a fair amount of bandwidth right now. If I want to know more, I can click on that interface, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up a flow monitor, and it's going to tell me all the applications that are flowing across this network at this time. So we can see my go-to meeting session. We can see some unauthorized client hotspot access. We probably aren't going to have time to talk about that. But again, you can see it just start to fill in all the different applications. So these are applications on that particular interface. If there's an application that is consuming a lot of bandwidth or giving me issues, we want to give you a real quick way to be able to make a change. So if I was to go through here and say I wanted to block YouTube, I can click on that block and you'll notice that it instantly blocked that application. So this is at an application side. We can also traffic shape and throttle those as well, and I'll show you on a little later on what that actually did for us. Here we can also see the top 10. So again, same sort of thing. We see this communication going on. We want to be able to quickly block or make a configuration change. So I think those are some areas that we make things easier and give you time back in your day. As we kind of go through the different sections here, you'll notice we give you a summary of what kind of goes on within that section. In this case, under the management side, I think this is really nice. I can see all the different changes that have happened, who made those changes at the time they happened, and I can expand these. So here, as I expand this, you're going to notice some of the things that I did and the rules that I created, which are right here. So give you the ability to go in and audit that system very quickly. Some of the other things that I think are really nice, again, are when we look at our backup process. Real easy to create backups. We'll auto-create backups. They can be emailed off, set that up. Another area where I think is important, where we help you give you more time, is around our update process. When we look at updating, some of the things that we want to do is we want to give you, right from this view, everything you need to know. So I am up to date. If this version of firmware was not up to date, I would have available versions of firmware listed here. If I had 4 or 5 different versions, I can click on any one of the versions that I want to get to, and we will take care of deploying all the dependencies needed to get you to that version. So if there are 3 or 4 different versions needed before we get to the one that I want to be on, we will take care of doing that installation for you without having to go through and do multiple clicks and multiple reboots. There will also be a little informational icon that you can click on, and that will give you the release notes. So give you everything right from within this view to be able to go through and make configuration changes. Some of the things that we also can do when we start talking about remote access is we can integrate with mobile control, and we can look at those mobile devices, make sure that they're compliant before we allow them access. Automatically push configurations out to those mobile devices. So this is where we're starting to help reduce the complexity by not having administrators configure things over and over and over again. We configure it once on this device, and then we're going to push those configurations out.
So how does that push a device? Does that push something out to that mobile device? I mean, or do you already have to have that mobile MDM installed on your local device?
Yeah, this actually integrates with our mobile control, our mobility manager product. So that's where that control starts to come into play. You would need to have that component as well in order to take advantage of this this feature built into the UTM. But this is some of the areas where you can see that those products, they work together, and we want to again help administrators so that they don't have to define things over and over again.
Yep.
My user section, we can take a look at users and groups. I have mine integrated with Active Directory. We do this a little bit unique to than others in the industry. Is we can do prompt for authentication, which is what we see here, my LDAP integration. But we also have our single sign-on component for being able to apply web filter policies to user groups without asking the user to log in. And we do it unique as far as we will actually join the domain just like a workstation. So once we become a part of that domain, you don't need to have single sign-on agents, and you don't need to have those things, running on your servers or your workstations. We're a part of that infrastructure now, so we're going to be able to understand it. We can go through and really easily create policies for my user community. So here's my user groups. And again, making it easy. Click on this folder, it's going to query my Active Directory if I want to create a policy on a new group of users or a new device, whatever it might be. I just drag and drop it down here, and now I'll synchronize that information back into the firewall. We're going to look, for the most part, once we go through my policy, is it my finance user? So that's kind of the user that we're going to be taking a look at more when we look at web filtering. It's again real easy to set up your policies based on user when we go through setting that config up as well. Interfaces and routing. So here's now we're going to start to see some graphs. Again, always the top 10 of things that are happening within that section. So I can see my geo flags. I can see all the different types of traffic. Here's a lot of traffic, going to this particular host and going to these particular services. So we can understand what's going on and what's happening there. I am dual stack, so I'm running IPv6 as well. So IPv6, static route, multi-routing capabilities, multiple interfaces. You can have multiple uplinks, link aggregation, a lot of robust information here and configuration. Some of the other things that I think are pretty unique is I can click on these items and it's going to show me this little informational icon, shows me where this object is used in all of my different policies. So I can go through and see once, okay, where is this particular object or this particular interface used in my configuration? Those are, again, some of the little things that I think are important to making this easy for administrators. Network protection. So this is the firewall side. This is protecting with your ATPs, protecting your, doing your IPS. You can see we have server load balancing. So this is the network protection side. So firewalls, again, we can see my geo flags. We can see any IPS events or ATP events that have happened, the source IP, and all this stuff. All these are quick little icons that you can click on, and it will bring you into that section where we can get more details or run more reports just within that area. If I click on these individual configuration areas, now we can see this is my firewall tab. Here's my geo-blocking. So all my country blocking. Very easy to set up your country blocking when we can set up if you want to block traffic to or from certain geography or geographical locations.
Now, Ben, are there certain features on the UTM? I mean, is it pretty configured out of the box? Do I plug it in and I'm ready to rock once I, get the initial config set up, or how much tweaking do I need to do, or what's my expectation if I get this thing and before I go live in my environment with it?
Sure, and that definitely depends on each environment. We have wizards that will definitely walk you through and get it set up to, a real good solid config, right out of the gate, so fairly quick. And then really it's understanding your business and where you're communicating, knowing do I need or should I block traffic going to or coming from any of these particular geographical locations. Obviously there are more high-risk sites and there are more high-risk configurations that you can go through to be a lot more restrictive in your config, but the wizard will definitely get you into a really good quick starting point in the setup.
Hey, does this UTM support multi-WAN?
Yep, if we look at interfaces and routing, we have multiple link aggregation, multi-path rules, additional interfaces, so absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Both physical and virtual. We can set up different internet, Ethernet types, hardware types, again, physical or VLAN capable interfaces. All right, a couple of the other things here I'm just going to point out real quick. You'll notice that we have a lot of ability to do source NAT, destination NAT, a lot of different NATing policies. One of the things that I think is nice is once you're creating a NAT policy, we can assume, or we're assuming, that you probably are going to want to allow that traffic in or out of the network. So you click this box and we will automatically create that firewall rule for you. So again, a one-step process. You set up your NAT policy, check that box, and we will create the firewall rule for you so you don't have to go in here and create that firewall rule in addition to the NAT policy. So they're really easy to set up your ATP protection, and again, all of these little things here as we go through, you'll notice I have live log capabilities in every single section. So if I want to see what's happening, I can open the live log. I don't have to go to the logging and reporting to go through all of this stuff. And what this is going to do is it's going to open the log, and this is going to tell me everything that's happening, and it's going to continue to scroll as to what's happening on this device right now. You can see usually a lot of country block that happens. So again, making it easy for the administrator to go through and take a look at what might be going on. This next section, web protection or web filtering. When we take a look at my web filtering policies, actually I'm running multiple web filters, so I'll turn this on here real quick. When we look at a web filter policy, this is where I'm filtering my users, so my finance user, managers, marketing. So again, integrated with Active Directory. When I go through and I set this up, we're going to have the different authentication methods. So we're going to do single sign-on, which means that I'm not going to prompt the user to log in, but I'm going to be able to produce a report on who that user is. HTTPS inspection, a very important section for being able to protect over HTTPS. You'll notice we have a couple different ways to do full HTTPS inspection. One is just the URL. You don't need to integrate with a certificate of authority, or this is not the man in the middle, if you're familiar with that term, type of SSL filtering. This one is man in the middle. So this is where you would need to integrate with a CA. A lot more details that we can discuss around that. If you'd like more details, definitely get a hold of Productive, and we can set up a more detailed explanation around HTTPS filtering. Just don't have enough time.
You could spend a whole half hour just on that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things that I do like is this section here where we can decrypt and scan the following. And this we put in here by default. We are going to decrypt and scan the high-risk sites. That's what you see here is all the high-risk categories. Again, we want to make it easy, so if you want to add a category, you click on that button and you drag and drop that category over, and now we will do HTTPS inspection on that category. So really easy to set up. Those sorts of policies, and again, we can dive into that in a more detailed and one-on-one session if needed. If we take a look at my policy, this is my web filtering policy that we're going to apply to my finance users. You'll notice we can do a whitelist, blacklist scenario. We also have the ability to block known spyware communication sites, very important. We have all the different categories. We can go in and we can pull different subcategories out of these. I'll show you the filter options here, what we're going to be able to do. But again, block, warn, allow, set quota. One of the things that I think is important is you need to have this dynamic ability here. When we look at websites, they change, their reputation changes all the time. And this is a tie-in with our labs or some of what we call our live protect technologies that, again, I would like to explain a little bit more, but just not going to have enough time. But when we look at this sort of protection, the reason why this is important is if you think about what things like malvertising. Real quick, malvertising is person who wants to infect a system, they're going to buy a legitimate ad space. So they buy a legitimate ad space from a broker. You go to a legitimate website, Google, MSN, they all produce ads. And what ends up happening is when this ad gets presented in that browser, it's going to do a real quick scan of that system. It's going to try and understand what browser did I connect with, what operating system am I running, what versions of Java or ActiveX do I have functioning on that device. And it will send a targeted exploit kit down to that system that's going to be just for that version of operating system and just for that Internet Explorer, so they have a much higher success rate in being able to infect a system. So that's where having these abilities and having a lot of the live protect technologies that we have, not only on the UTM but on the endpoint, really start to come into play when we look at that sort of stuff. So I think this is an important aspect when we look at web filtering, is having the ability to do blocking based on reputation. Here's our global allow and blacklist for websites. I block URLs, antivirus. This is one area that I think is also unique to us when we look at scanning for viruses. If you remember, this is my finance policy. My finance users have access to more high-risk content. So what I'm doing is I'm doing my layered security right within this one device. I'm doing and scanning with 2 different antivirus engines so that defense in depth is built right into the product. Where again, we're going to scan it with the Sophos antivirus engine and the Avera antivirus engine just by checking that box. So again, that defense in depth and being able to apply that policy to your high risk or your users that are accessing sensitive data, I think is important. And then we also have additional options. Yes.
Is that policy, right? You set the policy at the gateway. Does that then go down and tie into the endpoint, or I mean, is it going to? Right? Meaning,
absolutely can.
Yep.
It absolutely can tie in using our endpoint. And basically, when we look here, allowed endpoints, this is where it would tie in. In my particular demo, in this case, I don't have it tied into my endpoint. If I did, this wouldn't be grayed out, and I would be able to choose my endpoints. So absolutely, you can tie that in.
Sure.
So yeah, that is web filtering. A lot of different options. I just wanted to show a couple of things here. Here again are the categories within the categories. So you can go in and you can make these changes. You can add your own categories. Very customizable to set it up the way that you want to set it up, I think is important. Lots of other things that we can talk about here. Basically, we have very robust ability to set up exceptions. When you're doing HTTPS inspection, we need to make sure that we're not breaking things like Microsoft updates. So you can see a bunch of exceptions in here. This is another area where our labs group, where we will go in and we will create these exceptions for you. You don't need to do this. We get feeds from Microsoft and Apple and Adobe, and they tell us this is what you should exclude if you're doing this type of scanning. We will automatically do this for you. Again, this is with our labs group. So here's where you don't have to go through and spend the time. We get those feeds from Microsoft, so we might as well update it ourselves because we can update thousands of systems relatively quickly versus, you know, each administrator having to go in and do this themselves. So I think those are some nice time-saving things that we do as well. Quick little policy help desk where you can do a test for a URL. Really nice, again, easy to be able to set your policy. This next section will probably be the last section that we're going to cover. You can see that there's a lot more to cover, but just really want to talk a little bit about app control. If you remember early on, I clicked on that interface, it opened up a flow monitor. That's this same section is kind of where it brought me. It created this rule for me. I blocked YouTube via the flow monitor. Here it created the rule. It told me that it was done. I can click on this and I can also see the change. Who did it and when. So all of that information is there. When I'm done with this, I can turn it off and or I can just delete it. If we kind of continue along those lines and look at my finance user here, these are the applications that I'm allowing my finance people to do. So I'm blocking things like Facebook chat and Facebook posts. You can see there's just a whole number of applications that we can go through and we can control. So this is above and beyond web filter. This is really that layer 7, that app control, that I think is an important aspect to be able to protect from protect your environment from users doing things that they shouldn't do. So a lot of other things that we can kind of talk about and we can go through when we take a look at logging and reporting. We give you all of the logging and all the reporting capabilities to be able to create a lot of different reports, executive reports, remote access VPN, very standards based. So we can do branch office VPN tunnels. We can do client-side VPN tunnels. Client-side VPN tunnels, here we have SSL, PPTP, L2TP. If you're using a Cisco VPN client, you can continue to use that if you want. So I want to make sure we give you that flexible ability to go through and take care of and configure the things that you want within your environment. I think that we probably have about a minute and a half left. I don't know if there were any questions or anything that we wanted to cover at this point.
Ben, a couple things. So, right, why don't you tell me this? What comes with, you know, the UTM out of the box, and what, you know, what stuff do I need endpoint or other products to take advantage with in the UTM?
Yeah, so everything you see here pretty much comes out of the box. The endpoint protection, this is the only thing that is addition. This is actually endpoint antivirus for your workstations, your Windows, your Mac, your mobile devices. That's what this is. When we look at endpoint protection, most people are using our cloud or our enterprise console to manage that, and we can integrate with the UTM so that those products actually work together. We have things like heartbeats, and we have the ability to share policy. But basically everything that I showed you today, and then more obviously within SSL VPN and remote access and wireless, email protection we didn't even talk about. We have a full guard or bundled product which basically gives you everything that this box can do with the exception of, again, the endpoint that you would install on a workstation.
Yeah, so the heartbeat technology you're talking about, right, this is your next gen protection, right? When you see that, you said that's a marketing term, right? So is that available today, or when's that going to be ready for folks to tie the endpoint and the gateway together?
We're close. This is it right here. So
yeah,
we
so
are.
if you guys have, yeah, go ahead.
Yep, I was going to say we're within probably weeks of a external beta.
Okay, so this is their the Copernicus, the new I guess new software and hardware together that ties together the gateway and the endpoint and you know, all the other access points together so that Sophos can more effectively correlate threats, detect them, remediate them, irrespective of whether they're hitting inside your environment, at the gateway, or out in the wild.
Yep, and it's not new hardware. This hardware here, the hardware that you buy today, will be able to run Copernicus. It's just a matter of you decide when and if you want that version, and then you go to it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess, but haven't there been some new models that are out as well? I mean, I know that you can go all the way back to the existing.
Yeah, we've had some new models, and we've been introducing new models, but honestly, it's probably been 8 months since you've been able to buy an older UTM. As long as you have an SG appliance, you're good to go.
Yep. All right. There you go. So SG or better, and you're in. All right. I think that is getting us there.